First story, by John Anderson. It was a decision we made as a family. Tired of the hustle and bustle of city life, we decided to pack up and move to a quaint farmhouse on the outskirts of a small town in Iowa. The countryside promised tranquility, open spaces, and a slower pace of life. Little did we know, our dream of rural bliss would soon turn into a nightmare. The farmhouse, with its creaky wooden floors and aging charm, seemed idyllic at first. We settled in, excited about the prospect of a new beginning. The first few weeks were uneventful, with nothing more than the usual sounds of farm life echoing through the night. However, as the days turned into weeks, a subtle unease settled over our new home. One evening, as I strolled through the fields behind our house, I noticed shadows moving in the distance. Intrigued, I approached cautiously. What I saw froze me in my tracks. A group of people wearing tattered clothing, their faces obscured by shadows. They moved silently through the fields, seemingly oblivious to my presence. I rushed back home, my heart pounding. That night, strange noises echoed through the farmhouse. The floorboards groaned under unseen weight, and whispers seemed to fill the air. I dismissed it as my imagination running wild, but the feeling of being watched persisted. Days turned into nights filled with dread. One evening, while walking through the dimly lit barn, I stumbled upon a chilling scene. A room, hidden behind bales of hay, revealed a makeshift shrine adorned with cryptic symbols. The walls were covered in strange writings, and in the center of the room lay a mutilated animal carcass. Fear gnawed at the edges of my sanity. I tried to rationalize, attributing the bizarre occurrences to local folklore or the eccentricities of rural life. Yet, the feeling of being an outsider in our own home intensified. Late one night, as a storm raged outside, I awoke to the sound of footsteps. Creeping through the darkness, I found my family gathered in the living room, their eyes wide with terror. Outside, a group of hooded figures chanted in unison, their voices rising above the storm. They held torches, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. In that moment, the line between reality and nightmare blurred. We huddled together, praying for morning to come. When the first light broke, the figures were gone, leaving only the remnants of their ritual behind. We left that farmhouse, haunted by the memories of a place that promised peace but delivered only fear. The countryside, once our refuge, became a landscape of shadows and secrets. Our move, intended to bring us closer to nature, had instead thrust us into the heart of something dark and malevolent. Second story, by Emily Thompson. The move to our farmhouse in the outskirts of Salem, Massachusetts, was meant to be a fresh start. My husband, Mark, and I were drawn to the charm of the countryside, where rolling hills and ancient trees painted a serene picture. Little did we know that the quiet beauty concealed a sinister secret. It started innocently enough, odd occurrences that we could easily dismiss. The sound of footsteps on the gravel path outside our window, glimpses of figures disappearing into the mist. We brushed it off as the quirks of rural living, the product of overactive imaginations in a new environment. Late one night, curiosity led me into the forest that bordered our property. The moon cast an ethereal glow on the ancient trees, their twisted branches creating haunting silhouettes. As I ventured deeper, the air grew thick with an otherworldly tension. Unsettled, I quickened my pace. That's when I stumbled upon a clearing bathed in an eerie blue light. Hooded figures surrounded a makeshift altar, their chants rising in an unsettling chorus. I hid behind the trees, watching in horror as they performed a ritual that seemed to defy the laws of nature. Fear gripped me, and I retreated, vowing to keep the discovery a secret. But the presence of those hooded figures lingered, manifesting in subtle ways. Strange symbols appeared on the doors, and the air carried whispers that sent shivers down my spine. One night, as Mark and I lay in bed, a scratching sound echoed through the walls. We followed it to the attic, where a hidden room revealed an unsettling tableau. Dolls, their eyes vacant, were arranged in a grotesque display. Each one bore a resemblance to the townsfolk, a disturbing reflection of those who inhabited the shadows. Desperation set in as we sought answers. We delved into the town's history, uncovering tales of a secretive cult that had thrived for centuries. The farmhouse, it seemed, was built atop a dark nexus of energy, drawing the cultists like moths to a flame. One stormy night, the cultists gathered in our backyard, their hooded forms a macabre dance against the lightning-lit sky. Mark and I, armed with knowledge and resolve, confronted them. The air crackled with energy as we demanded they leave our lives forever. In the aftermath, the farmhouse stood silent, the malevolence lifted like a heavy fog. We left Salem, forever changed by our brush with the occult. The countryside that once seemed so inviting now bore the scars of ancient secrets, a warning to those who dared to venture into its depths. Third Story, by Sarah Walker. Leaving the city behind, my wife Emma and I decided to make a fresh start on a farm nestled in the rolling hills of Kentucky. The promise of a slower pace and the simplicity of rural life lured us to a seemingly idyllic farmhouse surrounded by acres of untouched land. Little did we know, our escape from the city would lead us into a nightmare. The first inkling of trouble came during a late-night walk through the vast fields. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced across the landscape. As we strolled hand in hand, a distant light flickered, catching our attention. Drawn by curiosity, we followed the glow to a dilapidated barn at the edge of the property. Inside, we discovered a group of people huddled around a table covered in maps and blueprints. Their whispered conversations ceased as they noticed us, and their eyes bore into ours with an intensity that sent shivers down our spines. We hastily retreated, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Days turned into nights filled with unease. Strange noises echoed through the farmhouse, and shadows seemed to move of their own accord. One evening, as we sat by the fireplace, the front door creaked open. No wind, no logical explanation, just an ominous invitation to the unknown. Determined to unravel the mystery, we delved into the history of the farm. Local rumors spoke of a group with dubious intentions, using the cover of darkness to carry out clandestine activities. Our farmhouse, it seemed, was the epicenter of their operations. One moonlit night, as we tiptoed through the fields, we stumbled upon a hidden cellar concealed beneath a trapdoor. The air inside was damp, and the flicker of candlelight revealed a room adorned with symbols and artifacts. It was a makeshift meeting place for the mysterious group, a secret lair in the heart of our newfound sanctuary. Convinced we had to expose their activities, we gathered evidence and contacted the local authorities. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the farm was a hub for illegal operations, hidden beneath the facade of rural simplicity. The night before the authorities arrived, the farmhouse was engulfed in an unsettling stillness. We could feel the eyes of the clandestine group on us, their presence a tangible force in the air. As the first rays of dawn broke, the authorities descended upon the farm, uncovering a network of deception and crime that had thrived in the shadows. We left the farmhouse behind, forever haunted by the knowledge that our escape to the countryside had thrust us into a web of deceit and danger. The open fields and rustic charm now bore the weight of secrets, a stark reminder that evil could lurk in the most unsuspecting places. Fourth story, by Michael Reynolds. Our decision to move to the countryside outside of Asheville, North Carolina, was fueled by a desire to escape the hectic pace of urban life. The farmhouse we found seemed like a haven, surrounded by dense forests and overlooked by the ancient Blue Ridge Mountains. Little did we know that the tranquility we sought would be shattered by the unsettling events that unfolded. The first sign of trouble came during a late-night walk through the dense woods. The moonlight struggled to penetrate the thick canopy overhead, casting eerie shadows on the narrow trail. As I navigated through the darkness, a distant sound caught my attention. At first, it was barely audible, a low murmur that seemed to echo through the trees. Curiosity overcame caution, and I followed the mysterious noise deeper into the forest. The murmur evolved into hushed conversations, punctuated by the rustling of leaves underfoot. As I approached a clearing, the moonlight revealed a group of individuals dressed in tattered clothing, their faces obscured by makeshift masks. They were gathered around a flickering fire, engaged in an animated discussion that sent chills down my spine. Fearful of being discovered, I retraced my steps, but the atmosphere had changed. The forest, once a place of solace, now felt alive with unseen eyes. Night after night, strange occurrences unfolded. Mysterious figures glimpsed through the trees, unexplained shadows dancing on the walls of the farmhouse, and the lingering sense that we were being watched. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a strange procession made its way through the forest. Cloaked figures, carrying lanterns and chanting in a language unknown to us, moved with purpose towards an ancient oak tree. We watched in silence, hidden from view, as they performed a ritual that seemed to tap into forces beyond comprehension. Determined to uncover the truth, we researched the history of the land. Local lore spoke of an abandoned settlement dating back to the early 1800s, a community with a penchant for the occult. Our farmhouse, it appeared, stood on the outskirts of their long-forgotten village. Armed with this knowledge, we confronted the cloaked figures during one of their nighttime gatherings. The air crackled with tension as we demanded an explanation for their activities. Their response was cryptic, a mixture of warnings and veiled threats. It became clear that our presence had disrupted something ancient, a pact forged in the shadows of history. As the days passed, the farmhouse itself seemed to rebel against our intrusion. The walls groaned, floorboards creaked, and the air carried whispers that spoke of a past long buried. Desperation set in as we grappled with forces beyond our understanding. One fateful night, as a storm raged outside, the farmhouse seemed to come alive. Shadows danced on the walls, and the air vibrated with an otherworldly energy. In the heart of the tempest, we glimpsed the spectral figures of the long-dead villagers, their eyes filled with a sorrowful rage. Terrified and overwhelmed, we fled the farmhouse, leaving behind the cursed land and the secrets it held. The countryside, once a symbol of peace, became a haunting reminder that some mysteries are better left undisturbed. Fifth story, by Laura Mitchell. Our decision to move to a centuries-old farmhouse in the outskirts of Bordeaux, France, was fueled by a romanticized vision of vineyards, rolling hills, and the charm of European rural life. The reality, however, turned out to be far more chilling than we could have imagined. The farmhouse, with its stone walls and time-worn beams, exuded an ancient energy. The first inkling of unease came during a late-night stroll through the vineyards. The moon cast a silvery glow on the rows of grapevines, but the serenity was shattered by a distant, mournful wail. It echoed through the hills, sending shivers down our spines. Determined to dismiss it as a trick of the wind, we continued our exploration of the countryside. As we neared the farmhouse, the wailing grew louder, transforming into a chorus of anguished voices. In the distance, we saw flickering lights, a procession of figures moving with a ghostly grace. Intrigued and unnerved, we followed the spectral parade to a forgotten cemetery hidden behind the farmhouse. The air was thick with the scent of moss-covered tombstones and the weight of centuries. The figures, cloaked in tattered garments, danced around an ancient oak tree, their eyes vacant and hollow. Night after night, the haunting melodies of the ghostly procession filled the air. The farmhouse, it seemed, was a nexus for spirits trapped between worlds. We tried to ignore the paranormal activity, attributing it to the rich history of the region, but the veil between the living and the dead grew thinner with each passing day. One evening, as we sat in the dimly lit living room, the atmosphere shifted. The temperature plummeted, and the air crackled with an otherworldly energy. Shadows danced on the walls, and the room seemed to pulse with a malevolent force. Terrified, we sought refuge in the only logical place, the vineyard. Under the moonlit sky, we witnessed a manifestation of the spirits that haunted the farmhouse. Apparitions of long-dead vintners moved between the vines, their spectral fingers caressing the grapes. It was a dance of sorrow and loss, a reminder that the land held the memories of those who had toiled and suffered. Desperation set in as we grappled with the realization that the farmhouse was a conduit for the supernatural. Seeking guidance, we consulted with local historians and spiritual leaders, hoping to find a way to appease the restless spirits. The solution, it seemed, lay in a forgotten ritual buried in the annals of local folklore. As we followed the ancient instructions, the air became charged with an otherworldly tension. The spirits, momentarily appeased, retreated into the shadows. The farmhouse, once a battleground between the living and the dead, stood silent under the watchful gaze of the moon. We left Bordeaux, forever marked by the haunting experience. The countryside, which had initially promised a picturesque escape, became a realm where the past bled into the present, leaving an indelible mark on our souls. Sixth Story, by Daniel Harris. Our decision to relocate to a farmhouse in the outskirts of Asheville, North Carolina, had been prompted by a desire for solitude and a simpler life. The quaint charm of the countryside, with its sprawling fields and dense woods, seemed like the perfect escape from the chaos of urban living. Little did we know that our pursuit of tranquility would unravel into a nightmarish sequence of events. The first signs of unease surfaced during one of our late-night walks through the dense thicket that surrounded the farmhouse. The moon cast an ethereal glow on the winding trails, and the rustling of leaves beneath our feet was accompanied by a distant, unsettling hum. Ignoring the feeling of foreboding, we ventured deeper into the woods, where the hum evolved into rhythmic chanting. As we approached a clearing, we stumbled upon a gathering of hooded figures, their faces obscured by shadows. In the center, an old oak tree stood tall, its branches adorned with strange symbols. The figures chanted in unison, their voices resonating with an unnatural energy. We watched in horrified silence, hidden in the shadows, as they seemed to draw power from the ancient tree. From that night forward, the atmosphere around the farmhouse changed. Unexplained noises echoed through the halls, and shadows seemed to dance in the corners of our vision. The air carried a weight, as if unseen eyes were watching our every move. Fear became a constant companion, and the tranquility we had sought turned into an elusive dream. one particularly ominous night, we awoke to the sound of footsteps echoing through the farmhouse. Armed with a flashlight, I ventured into the darkness, determined to uncover the source of the disturbance. The footsteps led me to the attic, a place we rarely explored. As I ascended the creaky stairs, the air grew colder, and the light of my flashlight flickered. In the attic, I discovered a room hidden behind a disused wardrobe. It was filled with old, weathered books, each one bound in leather and adorned with cryptic symbols. The room's centerpiece was a dusty, ornate mirror, reflecting an unsettling image of hooded figures standing behind me. Before I could react, the figures vanished, leaving me alone in the eerie silence of the attic. Disturbed and perplexed, I shared my discovery with my partner. We delved into the history of the farmhouse, uncovering tales of a secretive cult that had once inhabited the area. The farmhouse, it seemed, was at the epicenter of their dark rituals, and the ancient oak tree was believed to be a conduit for otherworldly forces. Determined to put an end to the unsettling occurrences, we sought the help of a local historian versed in the region's folklore. Together, we performed a ritual meant to cleanse the farmhouse of its malevolent energy. As we chanted ancient incantations, the air crackled with a palpable tension. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the ritual had succeeded. The farmhouse stood silent, and the oppressive weight lifted from the air. However, as we exhaled in relief, a sudden gust of wind blew through the attic, extinguishing our candles. The mirror rattled, and a haunting whisper echoed through the room. Terrified but resolute, we decided to leave the farmhouse behind, bidding farewell to the ominous presence that had plagued our lives. The countryside, which had once seemed like a haven, became a landscape of hidden terrors and ancient secrets, forever etched in our memories. Seventh Story, by Olivia Reynolds. The decision to move to a farmhouse in the serene outskirts of Tuscany, Italy, was fueled by our romanticized visions of vineyards, rolling hills, and the timeless beauty of the European countryside. Little did my husband, Marco, and I know that the rustic charm of our new home would soon be overshadowed by a series of inexplicable and unsettling events. The first inkling that something was amiss came during one of our late-night walks through the picturesque vineyards surrounding the farmhouse. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a silvery glow on the olive groves and rows of grapevines. As we strolled hand in hand, a distant whisper caught our attention. It was a hushed, almost ethereal murmur that seemed to float through the air. We followed the mysterious sound to an ancient chapel nestled in the heart of the vineyard. The doors stood slightly ajar, and as we pushed them open, a gust of cold wind welcomed us. Candles flickered in the dim light, casting dancing shadows on the weathered stone walls. At the altar, a group of hooded figures stood in silence, their faces hidden beneath the folds of their garments. Feeling like intruders in a forbidden ritual, we quickly retreated, the haunting whispers lingering in our ears. From that night on, the farmhouse, which had initially promised a peaceful haven, became a stage for unsettling occurrences. Strange noises echoed through the hallways, and shadows seemed to move with a life of their own. Determined to unravel the mystery, we delved into the history of the area. Local legends spoke of a hidden sect that practiced ancient rituals in the vineyards, tapping into the mystical energy of the land. Our farmhouse, it appeared, was situated on the nexus of their spiritual activities. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, we stumbled upon a hidden cellar beneath the farmhouse. The air inside was thick with the scent of aged wine and the residue of countless rituals. The walls were adorned with arcane symbols, and an altar stood in the center, bearing traces of offerings made to unseen forces. Fueled by a desire to confront a mysterious sect, we attended one of their gatherings in the vineyard. Clad in hooded robes, they chanted in a language unknown to us, their voices rising and falling with an eerie cadence. As we observed from the shadows, it became clear that they believed the vineyard held a connection to an otherworldly realm. Determined to put an end to the unnerving occurrences, we sought guidance from a local spiritualist. Together, we performed a ritual meant to cleanse the farmhouse and vineyard of the lingering energies. As incantations filled the air, a gust of wind swirled through the chapel, carrying with it the distant sounds of whispers and chants. For a moment, it seemed as though the ritual had succeeded. The air felt lighter, and the shadows retreated. However, the peace was short-lived. Late one night, as we slept, the farmhouse seemed to come alive with an otherworldly energy. The walls groaned, and the air vibrated with an unseen force. In a state of panic, we gathered our belongings and left the farmhouse behind. The allure of the Tuscan countryside had transformed into a haunting experience, leaving us with a sense of unease that lingered long after we had departed. The beauty of the vineyards and rolling hills now bore the weight of ancient secrets, a reminder that some mysteries were never meant to be uncovered. Eighth Story, by Thomas Johnson. The decision to escape the hustle and bustle of city life led my family to a farmhouse nestled in the outskirts of Charlottesville, Virginia. Surrounded by vast fields and embraced by the serenity of the countryside, the old farmhouse promised an escape from the stress of urban living. However, the peace we sought would soon be shattered by a series of inexplicable and unsettling events. The first sign of trouble occurred during one of our late-night walks through the expansive fields that stretched out behind the farmhouse. The moon hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the landscape. As we strolled through the tall grass, a distant sound reached our ears, a low, guttural moan that sent a shiver down our spines. Following the haunting noise, we stumbled upon an ancient cemetery hidden in the heart of the fields. The tombstones, weathered by time, bore names that had long been forgotten. Yet, as we ventured deeper, the moans grew louder, seemingly emanating from the decaying wooden chapel at the center of the graveyard. Determined to unravel the mystery, we entered the chapel. The air inside was thick with the scent of damp wood, and the flickering candlelight revealed a group of hooded figures gathered around a makeshift altar. Their eyes were obscured by darkness, but the intensity of their gaze was palpable. As we watched in silence, they chanted in a language unknown to us, their voices rising and falling in a haunting melody. Terrified, we retreated to the farmhouse, but the unsettling events did not cease. Strange occurrences became a nightly ordeal, unexplained footsteps echoing through the hallways, the creaking of doors swinging open on their own accord, and the persistent feeling of being watched. It was as if an unseen presence had claimed the farmhouse as its own. One evening, while exploring the attic, I stumbled upon a dusty journal hidden beneath a pile of old furniture. Its pages were filled with cryptic symbols and descriptions of dark rituals performed in the very fields that surrounded us. The author, a previous resident of the farmhouse, chronicled encounters with a mysterious cult that seemed to draw power from the land itself. Armed with this newfound knowledge, we sought answers from the local community. Old-timers spoke in hushed tones about a cult that had once thrived in the area, tapping into supernatural forces to gain control over the land. The farmhouse, it appeared, had become a focal point for their malevolent activities. Determined to break free from the grip of the unseen forces, we enlisted the help of a local spiritualist. Together, we performed a cleansing ritual meant to banish the lingering energies that had taken residence in the farmhouse. As incantations echoed through the rooms, a sudden gust of wind rattled the windows, and the air seemed to vibrate with a mysterious energy. For a brief moment, it felt as though the ritual had succeeded. The farmhouse stood silent, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted. However, our relief was short-lived. Late one night, as a storm raged outside, the farmhouse seemed to come alive with an otherworldly energy. The walls groaned, and the air crackled with an unseen force. In a state of panic, we left the farmhouse behind, seeking refuge in the safety of the city. The countryside, once a symbol of peace, had become a landscape of hidden terrors and ancient secrets. The fields, once the backdrop of our idyllic escape, now bore the scars of a dark history that refused to be forgotten. Ninth Story, by Isabel Bennett. The decision to relocate to a farmhouse nestled in the outskirts of Lyon, France, was an attempt to rediscover simplicity and escape the complexities of city living. The picturesque landscape of rolling hills and a charming farmhouse seemed like the perfect sanctuary for our family. Little did we know that the tranquility we sought would be overshadowed by a haunting presence that lurked beneath the rustic facade. The first whispers of unease manifested during one of our late-night walks through the countryside. The moon bathed the landscape in silver, and the air was thick with the fragrance of blooming lavender. As we strolled through the narrow pathways, the rhythmic murmur of distant voices reached our ears. Intrigued and apprehensive, we followed the ethereal voices to an ancient stone well at the edge of the property. There, a group of hooded figures stood in a circle, their faces concealed by shadows. The air buzzed with an eerie energy as they chanted in a language that felt both archaic and unsettling. We watched from a distance, hidden among the olive trees, as the figures completed their ritual. As the last incantation faded into the night, an inexplicable chill swept through the air. Fear gripped us, and we hurried back to the farmhouse, haunted by the realization that our newfound haven concealed secrets far darker than we could have imagined. The nights that followed were plagued by strange occurrences. Footsteps echoed through the hallways, doors creaked open on their own, and the scent of lavender turned into a suffocating perfume that lingered in every room. Shadows seemed to dance in the corners of our vision, and an unspoken tension settled over the farmhouse. Determined to unveil the mysteries that surrounded us, we delved into the history of the region. Local legends spoke of an ancient druidic cult that once inhabited the hills, practicing rituals to commune with nature and tap into mystical energies. The farmhouse, it seemed, stood on the crossroads of their sacred grounds. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, we discovered a hidden chamber beneath the farmhouse. The air inside was thick with the scent of ancient herbs, and the flickering candlelight revealed walls adorned with symbols and runes. In the center of the room, a stone altar bore traces of offerings and rituals that dated back centuries. Armed with this newfound knowledge, we sought the guidance of a local historian with expertise in occult practices. Together, we crafted a plan to confront the lingering spirits and break the cycle of dark energies that had ensnared the farmhouse. The ritual involved ancient chants, herbal concoctions, and a delicate balance between light and shadow. As we conducted the ceremony, the air crackled with a palpable energy. Shadows danced on the walls, and the scent of lavender transformed into a sweet, calming aroma. For a brief moment, it seemed as though the forces that bound the farmhouse had relented. However, the true test came on a stormy night. As thunder rumbled in the distance, the farmhouse quivered with an otherworldly energy. The walls groaned, and the air pulsated with an unseen force. In a state of desperation, we faced the storm head-on, chanting the ancient words that were meant to sever the ties to the spectral realm. As dawn broke, the storm subsided, and the farmhouse stood silent once more. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, and the tendrils of dark energy that had ensnared us seemed to dissipate. We left the farmhouse, forever changed by the ordeal, but with a newfound appreciation for the unseen forces that shaped the landscape. 10th Story by Clara Martin. Our family's decision to trade the urban chaos for a farmhouse in the outskirts of Munich, Germany, was rooted in a desire for a simpler, more connected existence. The allure of a charming farmhouse surrounded by lush fields and dense forests seemed like the perfect antidote to the stresses of city life. Little did we know that our pursuit of tranquility would unravel into a nightmarish series of events that blurred the line between reality and the supernatural. The first signs of trouble emerged during one of our late-night walks through the expansive woods that bordered the farmhouse. The moon cast dappled shadows on the winding trails, and the air was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. As we ventured deeper into the forest, a peculiar sound caught our attention, the rhythmic beat of drums echoing through the trees. Intrigued, we followed the distant drumming until we stumbled upon a clearing bathed in an unnatural blue light. A group of figures, clad in hooded robes, surrounded a bonfire, their eyes fixed on a mysterious ritual unfolding in the center. As we observed from the shadows, the figures chanted in a language that resonated with ancient power, sending shivers down our spines. Retreating to the farmhouse, we dismissed the eerie encounter as a product of our imagination. However, the atmosphere within the farmhouse began to shift. The air grew heavy with unspoken tension, and the walls seemed to absorb the whispers of the forest. Sleepless nights became the norm, punctuated by the haunting echoes of distant drums. Determined to unravel the mystery, we delved into the history of the farmhouse. Local legends spoke of a forgotten cult that once inhabited the woods, practicing rituals to invoke the spirits of the ancient Germanic gods. The farmhouse, it appeared, was situated on a nexus of spiritual energy that drew the attention of those seeking communion with the divine. Intrigued and apprehensive, we continued our exploration of the woods. One moonlit night, we stumbled upon an ancient stone circle hidden deep within the forest. The air crackled with energy, and the moss-covered stones seemed to hum with a mystical resonance. As we stood within the circle, the boundaries between the natural and supernatural blurred, and a sense of being watched settled over us. The climax of our ordeal occurred during a stormy night. As lightning streaked across the sky, the farmhouse seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. Shadows danced on the walls, and the air resonated with the distant beat of drums. In a state of desperation, we confronted the spectral presence, demanding answers and invoking the protection of the ancient gods. For a moment, the farmhouse stood suspended in a surreal limbo. The storm raged outside, and the air crackled with energy. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the supernatural turmoil ceased. The farmhouse returned to stillness, and the haunting presence that had gripped us seemingly retreated into the depths of the forest. We left the farmhouse behind, forever marked by the inexplicable events that had unfolded within its walls. The countryside, which had initially promised an escape into simplicity, now bore the scars of ancient rituals and spectral energies. The woods, once a place of natural beauty, held secrets that transcended the boundaries of the tangible world. Thank you for joining us for the whole video. That video you see on screen is one of my favorite. Check it out. If you've enjoyed these horror stories, show your support by hitting the subscribe button. Did this tale send chills down your spine? Let me know in the comments.